Well, I'm going to do something you don't usually see at this kind of venue. I'm going to read to you from a textbook. And this is a textbook about sustainability. And as you are getting the sense, sustainability is about the whole world. And so the scope is just vast. And there are many, many details. And so trying to think about what to leave out is just as hard as trying to think about what to include. So what I will do for you is just read a few short excerpts from a few of the chapters, like a mosaic, if you will. And the first chapter is, what is sustainability? What is sustainability? It means enduring into the long-term future. It's about systems that can operate on their own and persist over long periods of time. And the concept of systems is fundamental to sustainability. Why have these systems persisted for so long? The Earth is a mosaic of many different environments at many different scales, yet no matter which piece you study, at whatever scale, you see common patterns. There isn't any waste. Energy flows through and materials go round and round in closed loops, with the byproducts from one creature or system becoming inputs or food for another. Things are connected. At every scale are rich networks of connections and interconnections and interdependence, with elements depending on each other and affecting each other. The planet is made of systems that are nested and interconnected at multiple scales. Complex systems are always unpredictable. They behave in nonlinear ways. These systems are not only more complex than we know, they are more complex than we can know. But it is that complexity and diversity that makes systems resilient. Resilience is the capacity of a system to absorb disturbance and still retain its basic function and structure. Resilience is the cornerstone of sustainability. And diversity is a key to the resilience of systems. Whether we are talking about species, people, economies, or landscapes, the more variations there are, the more diverse the components are, the better a system will be able to deal with complexity and remain resilient. The biosphere. Life has been pursuing its way on the planet for 3.8 billion years, and for all but the last few thousand years, it has done it without us. Right outside our doors is a vast living instruction manual. If we read it carefully, we might be able to create solutions that work. And what do we read there? Nothing about the physical world is static. The entire universe with us in it is constantly moving and changing, reusing and recycling, dying and regenerating at every scale, from the great star factories in the arms of spiral galaxies to the microscopic realms beneath our feet. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, and everything must go somewhere. The same atoms are recycled again and again. A carbon atom you just exhaled was flung into interstellar space by an exploding star billions of years ago, then reforged in the furnace of our own star, and along its journey might have built the structure of a bacterial cell 3 billion years ago, been exhaled by a dinosaur 100 million years ago, been pulled beneath Earth's crust and eventually expelled by a volcano 10 million years ago, circulated through clouds and rain, and been breathed in by an oak tree 100 years ago, all before it moved through you. When we think of nature, we often picture visible creatures we all like. birds, butterflies, pandas. But the big creatures we like live because of the small things we cannot see. It turns out that bacteria are not only the oldest, most numerous, and most diverse organisms on Earth, they run the planet. Every living system on Earth depends on these tiny, complex beings. The constant flows of energy and matter within the complex network structures of life mean that new forms can emerge spontaneously. This is emergence, a feature of all life in which surprising properties appear in a system that could not have been predicted by focusing on individual parts. Emergence happened in a big way early in the history of life. About 2 billion years ago, the greatest pollution disaster in the history of Earth threatened to wipe out all life on the planet. Ancient bacteria had begun emitting oxygen for the first time, and it began to accumulate. This reactive gas happened to be highly toxic to the life forms then living on the planet, and many species were completely wiped out. But in this early oxygenated atmosphere, in a dramatic example of emergence, some life forms actually developed the ability to breathe this formerly toxic chemical, and the diversity of life began to flourish. All life at all scales is made of networks. Whether you're thinking about human brains connected across the internet, or networks of neurons within one human brain, or networks of fungal threads underground, or the networks of galaxies that fill the universe, you could say that life is more about the relationships between things than about the things themselves. The lack of a sharp distinction between individuals and communities is a feature of life. If nature is a complex net of energy connections which concentrate in places to form organisms, then the distinction between individual and community is merely a question of scale. And the human sphere. When we talk about the challenges facing Earth systems, people often ask, isn't population really the only problem? It is true that damaged ecosystems, resource depletion, pollution, and water shortages have increased exponentially, driven by human population numbers. But the primary driver of the sustainability crisis now gripping the planet is economic growth. We live on a rapidly changing planet that is fundamentally different than it was when any of us were children. In the last 50 years, population has doubled, consumption of water has tripled, the use of fossil fuel has quadrupled. Synthetic pesticides and heavy metals are found in the tissues of every animal on Earth. The end of cheap fossil fuels is looming. The 6th mass extinction is underway, with 50% of current species predicted to be gone by the year 2050. 90% of large fish have disappeared from the oceans, victims of overfishing. Coral reefs are dying and mollusk populations shrinking as ocean water becomes increasingly acidic. Mountain glaciers are melting, deserts are growing, sea level is rising, and waves of climate refugees are likely in the near future. The driver of all this change is economic. In particular, the economic growth model that has been at the core of commercial activity since World War II. And continuing the growth model is not just a bad idea, it is physically impossible. We have the planetary equivalent of a savings account, but it's made of plants, animals, soil, water, and air, known as natural capital. Living systems are finite, and being sustainable means not using them up beyond their capacity to regenerate. Climate. Many scientists believe that climate change is the most serious crisis facing our planet. Now, a changing climate is nothing new. A look at ancient climate shows that Earth has been warmer in the past than it is now. What is unprecedented, however, is the speed of the change. Never in the history of the planet has the temperature increased so rapidly, a change brought about by the combination of exploding population numbers, economic growth, and industry built on fossil fuels. We have what is known as climate commitment. And that means that even if we stop burning fossil fuels tomorrow, we are now committed to a warmer climate because of the carbon dioxide already in the atmosphere. Even if our most ambitious efforts to lower emissions are successful, the fact remains that we now inhabit a planet that is different than the one on which human civilization developed and on which it has lived throughout its history. It is warm and getting warmer. The question now will be how much and how we and our fellow living beings will adapt. After 2 centuries of fossil fuel consumption, science tells us that the Earth system has become destabilized. Gaia's condition is guarded. Still, there are grounds for hope. If we are very committed, the climate will eventually stabilize, and carbon dioxide concentration will eventually begin to fall below the safer level of 350 parts per million. At that point, assuming that geochemical cycles, remaining ecosystems, and other planetary components have stabilized, the parts of the Earth system which survive will be able, slowly, to soak up the excess carbon dioxide and restore balance. However, much will have changed. Earth, when it settles into a new state of equilibrium, will not be the same as it was before. And between now and then lies the transition, and that is where we live now. This transition back to stability will take at least centuries. Science tells us that the climate impacts of fossil fuels are expected to last hundreds, probably thousands of years. The work we do now is for a future we will never see. This work, the stabilization of Earth's climate to maintain livability of the biosphere for us and so many fellow creatures, may be the most consequential work we will do. Sorry, I thought I could get through that, but I guess I can't.
Don't worry about it.
And the final chapter is working as agents for change. A larger purpose underlies sustainability work, transformation, transforming civilization toward a regenerative system which promotes healthy ecosystems, consumes resources no faster than they can be replenished, releases toxins no faster than they can be absorbed, allows wastes from one cycle to become nutrients for another, fosters healthy, cohesive communities with opportunity for all, and continues into the long-term future. Humans have gone through several major transitions in their history: the discovery of fire, the development of language, agriculture and settlements, the Industrial Revolution. We now live at the threshold of another major turning, at the beginning of the Anthropocene epoch, as humanity moves away from an industrial age built on fossil fuel and economic growth and towards what could turn out to be a steady-state economy within a regenerative and sustainable society. Can we envision what life on the other side of the transition might be like? It seems clear that nearly every aspect of our modern way of living will be transformed to some degree, from where and how we grow our food, to how we transport ourselves and our goods, to how those goods are made. We can expect a resurgence in high-quality, durable goods, locally made and reused for generations. The mission of education will expand, teaching learners about local ecology and giving them experience with skills for self-reliance. Civics will become important as people relearn skills for participating in democratic governance. Humans will take a more active role in the health of the biosphere. Job markets will shift as some jobs become obsolete while new green economy jobs appear. We may still occasionally drive personal vehicles, but most people will take advantage of interconnected public transit networks. Energy will come increasingly from renewable sources, transmitted over networked microgrids. Communities will be more decentralized and more resilient. Buildings, landscapes, food, and social structures will look different in each place as placelessness becomes a relic of an earlier time. Human connections across the globe using information technology will continue to build collective learning, even as local clusters become more self-reliant and resilient, a robust exemplar of classic scale-free networks at a planetary scale. Well, a question often raised is whether we should be optimistic or pessimistic, whether we should feel hope or despair. This may be an unhelpful dichotomy, for both hope and despair ask us to predict a future that is in fact unknown, and both give us reasons not to act. What we know, based on reliable evidence, is that, at the least, Earth's climate will be changing and its oceans will be rising for centuries to come. The era of a petroleum-powered, ever-expanding economy will come to an end, and a significant portion of the species alive today will no longer be with us. To feel sorrow and even despair in the face of this reality is reasonable, a stage of grieving as we move from denial to a more productive stage. On the other hand, blind optimism, the belief that all will be well because nature always finds a way, is not so productive. We should remember that if nature makes adjustments, its new state may well not include us. There's a third path, action. A Latin proverb says, "If there is no wind, row." The way to move away from both debilitating despair and paralyzing optimism is to do. To choose to act from a position of engaged, active hope based on a positive vision. At the beginning of the civil rights era, when a realistic assessment showed clear evidence of racism deeply embedded all around him, Dr. Martin Luther King's speech was not, "I have a nightmare." His speech was a call to action. "I have a dream." So, find a place to stand. Choose what you love. Start from there. Do what you can. Connect with others. What we know about networks, systems, and resilience tells us that all of us acting collectively can shift the system's trajectory.